everyone, and welcome to the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast. I'm Gus Kattengell alongside Mr. Jim Eichenhofer, Pelicans.com, and Mr. John DeShazier, radio analyst for you New Orleans Pelicans. Looking forward to our conversations. Although it is that time of year, and what I mean by that is it's a tough time of season as the Pelicans have started out in a way that now we're going in a different direction. So James Borrego, the interim head coach for the Pelicans. Gentlemen, let's just start there because he spoke extensively about what he's expecting his team to sort of do and kind of in line and become an identity-wise, if that makes sense, John.
Well, I mean, when you think about it, had this team had an identity for the first 12 games, you don't necessarily know what they were. I don't know that they understood exactly what they were or what the expectations were or how they were playing. So what James Borrego said was, look, we want to play a certain way. A couple of things he talked about was aggression and force and joy, because there was some strain on these guys. You could kind of sense it where you had some games where it was, oh, here we go again, those kinds of things. So you want to see these guys play with a little bit more joy, obviously, because at the end of the day, it's a game. Have fun. It's a game. All the guys grew up wanting to do this, dreaming about doing this. Mm-hmm. So now you're in your dream. Have fun with it. But you also got to be businesslike about it. And that's where the force and aggression comes with. Because, I mean, this team, let's face it, had some passivity to it. You know, been pushed around a little bit. And so now you got to stand up and say, okay, we're not going to take it. We're not going to take it, okay? You just can't be pushed around in the NBA because you develop a reputation and everybody sees the film. It's out there for everybody to see. And if one team pushes you around, everybody says we can push you around. So they really need to establish that identity, and hopefully going forward they're able to.
I'm not sure if I can add any singing to his lyrics, but no, I think one of the biggest things that stood out to me that was almost a little bit jarring listening to James Borrego talk when he was first announced as the interim head coach was he talked a lot about they need to get their heads up. They need to be more positive. Yeah. I mean, I think you forget sometimes too that losing how much of a toll it takes on players. I mean, these guys are obviously very well compensated. They have amazing jobs, but you start out 0-6 and it kind of affects you. And I mean, that was the thing that it was almost a little surprising to hear, but it made sense. And I do think too, when you look back at it, the first 2 games of the season, as much as you say, like it's a couple games and there's still 80 games left, I think those were really destructive. If you think about, you could have won the opener against Memphis. Mm-hmm. You had a good chance to beat the Spurs and didn't do it, lost in overtime of that game. Next thing you know, you're playing some of the best teams in the NBA and you're 0-6. I thought that part of it was really had a big, unfortunate negative effect. And the other thing too, that he talked about that I took note of was just the fact that he was going to make changes immediately. And that was something that we saw in the game Sunday against Golden State. We're recording this before Monday's game against Oklahoma City. But, I mean, immediately he changed the starting lineup. He changed some of the minutes for different players. Karlo Makovic played 20-plus minutes for the first time this season. He has a bunch of different ideas about playing faster. So that part of it I wasn't surprised by, though, because I feel like almost whenever you see an in-season change at head coach across the NBA, no matter what team it is, they immediately will put their imprint on things, whether it's how they determine who's going to play more, who's going to play less, maybe the style of play a little bit. Right. So we saw that immediately, though.
And I think the big thing was, and you referenced it again, the playing with joy. You play basketball, but these guys look like it was work. It's different when you're playing and when it looks like work. It looks like they were laboring under the weight of, okay, we're 2-10. It doesn't feel like we're going to win this game. You get to a certain point in the game where the Pelicans have played well, and then all the bottom falls out. And it's almost like an expectation. It's hovering there. And when it happens, of course the heads go down. So you want to just get these guys back to having fun, joy, playing with some kind of purpose from that standpoint. Because really, again, it's a game. Now you're playing for each other, and obviously you get compensated for it. And at the end of the day, it's about wins and losses now. Why Willie Green's no longer the coach. But you can get there, I think, a little bit better if you're having fun at what you're doing and you're really putting everything you have into it.
You and Graf call it during the game contagious, right? I mean, we saw it obviously in a couple of games against the Pelicans where, guys are getting either career nights or threes are falling everywhere. There's Grayson Allen or Moses Moody. But confidence has that other side to it, and we've all been a part of it. And having been on the road this season, and you feel it. I remember being on the bus on the way to Intuit Center, and we're trying to remember the last win, and this was before the team got that first win. It was along the lines of what Jim was just saying. I know it's a new season. I know it's a whole new everything, new players, new rookies, but when you look at your phone and you see March 30th as your last win, and you're still looking for that first win, and even in that game, you had a chance against the Clippers. So it does, and you do feel that weight. And that's why I thought it was interesting when James Borrego was talking about holding on to the rope, fighting on the sword when you're down 20, down 10. I thought that was remarkable in his opening, hey, this is what I want this team to be speech to media. He's referring and knowing that, hey, when we get down, we need to pick ourselves up. So he was being very specific of when we've been down this season, it's been hard for us to fight back. And I think in that Golden State game, John, you said in the broadcast, you cut it down to 4, so you were there and you were battling. And I thought they did show a little bit of that in this first game.
Yeah, I mentioned the first 2 games of the season. That Clippers game was another example of, I actually thought that was a good example of you're down by a lot, you fight back, but ultimately you lose at the buzzer. It's another case of you got to keep your heads up because it's demoralizing to lose like that. Incidentally, Kawhi Leonard has barely played since that game, which is another stroke of luck for the Pelicans that has happened. But I think I've seen it on both sides. When you win, when you go on a big winning streak, you start to think we're never going to lose again. When you go on a losing streak, you start to think you're never going to win again. The other part of it too, on the court, I think when a team goes into a losing skid like they were, where they're 0-6 and then 2-10, you start to try to do stuff on your own. You start to think, I'm going to be the guy who's going to fix this.
Yes.
And that's the last thing you want. And the other thing that Borrego talked about multiple times on the multiple days that he came in was trust. And to me, that's a big thing that we need to see as well is guys sharing the ball. Another thing that he mentioned from his San Antonio background, that was one of the biggest principles that they have there is move the ball, share the ball. You just have guys that kind of break plays off, and they're like, I'm getting well paid. There's a lot of pressure on me. I'm going to be the one that wins us this game. And then when that happens, if a bunch of guys all do that, you just have chaos and you don't have kind of a team concept that is going to help you win.
Yeah, that becomes the mindset. I can do a little bit more. I can do a little bit more. I can do a little bit more. And I can do a little bit more turns into I can do it all. Instead of, okay, I got a teammate over there open on the wing, but I'm going to take this shot anyway. Or this offense, this set calls for me to swing the ball. I'm going to hold it and I'm going to dribble it and I'm going to see if I can create something. No, you got to trust what you've been taught in practice and your teammates. That's the reason you guys practice together. There's a reason you guys put up all the shots you do. You got to trust that when you swing it, that guy's going to make you right and he's going to make that shot. Because if you stop that trust, now all of a sudden you start to overdo things and it becomes either a missed shot, a bad shot, a turnover. Very few good things come out of it. I think against Golden State, we saw a couple of shot clock beaten threes where the ball stuck in guys' hands and they were just fortunate to get off a 3 and swish it. But that's not a sustainable offense. You can't win that way consistently. And so you got to be trusting with your teammates.
It's interesting. Coach Borrego talked about that specifically, trust and also moving the basketball around. But he specifically said it starts with habits. And he's like, it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to be a magic wand. So I thought it's interesting you just said that because Coach literally said it starts with habit building. So it's going to take a little bit. But look, obviously, if you're Coach Borrego, we're going to play the part and the role here since we can have a little fun. When I look at it, what am I attacking? What are the areas of need do I need to attack? Jim, I can start with you, but can I suggest something? How about transition defense? I feel like every time I listen to the broadcast, it's either Graf or it's either JD. After a Pels bucket, there's a layup on the other end. So I'm going to suggest to Coach Borrego, transition defense, and I have another one, which I'll get to later.
That was one of the things I have on my list. This is only a 30-minute show, so we had to keep it to a certain number and not go over that. But yeah, I had transition defense. I'll mention that first because you brought it up. I want to see a box score line added to NBA stats where it says points that you gave up after you scored immediately. It seems like, and I've watched enough games around the NBA to know that this isn't just a Pelicans thing, but it definitely is a specific problem here that we've seen over and over again is how many times you score a layup or a three-pointer or whatever it is, and then at the other end, within 4 or 5 seconds, you're giving up a basket. We have analytics for everything. I feel like that needs to be tracked because that's been a problem. just getting back on defense has been one of the biggest issues. Another thing, again, I don't want to get too long into this, but on my list is rebounding. It feels like I talked about this a little bit with some of the other media guys during the Golden State game. It feels like sometimes that defensive rebounding in particular is someone else's job. It feels like if you watch the players, it's like they're waiting for other guys to rebound. And what we want to see is completely the opposite of that, which is every guy on the court, all 5 guys have the mentality that I need to grab this defensive rebound. Yeah. And if you have 3 guys collide with each other and they start to need to have to wear helmets because they're getting, I'm fine with that. But it feels like that's been an issue so far, is that they're giving up too many offensive rebounds. You combine that with the defensive play, which has been poor, and it's just frustrating because not only are you not getting a lot of first stops, but now you're having to get a second and third and fourth stop a lot of times. And then lastly, and maybe I'll come back to more, but I want to let JD chime in as well. Finishing at the basket, this is something that's been a problem. You can look at a bunch of different stats that show that Gus wants dunks. But even just, it's just been a problem. And it's also another thing too. Basketball analysts talk about this. You hear this on TV all the time. If you miss a layup on one end, you're almost always giving up a basket at the other. So those are 3 areas. There's more than that, but I'll let JD go.
Yeah, and I'll go with the vague finish, just finish, because that covers several areas. Like against Golden State, we saw this team not finish in transition, not finish fast break. 4 of 18 from the field on fast breaks. Finishing in the quarters. They held Golden State to 9 points for 10.5 minutes of the second quarter. Golden State finished that quarter 8-0.
Yeah.
8-0. Then they finished the third quarter 7-0 because the Pels didn't finish the ends of those quarters, and then that allowed Golden State to take a 4-point lead and make it 12 at halftime, and then stretch out the lead at the end of the third quarter after all the progress you had made. And then, of course, finishing around the basket, because you go into that game shooting 49% on layups for the season.
That number is astounding.
That is astounding.
That's at the rim, folks. To kind of explain what that is, that's the ball's
49% from the field on layups. That is, obviously it's possible because the Pels are doing it, right. But you wouldn't think it's possible.
And you guys brought it up in the broadcast. If you make half of that, I'm not a mathematician. Jim's much better at that than I am, right? But you keep saying the math don't math.
Yeah.
You said 4 of 18. So half of those would be 9. If I just get a layup, that's 2. That's 18 points. You were down by as little as 4. I mean, 18 points that are right there. It doesn't have to take anything other than a layup.
You just got to be able to finish. You got to be able to finish. And I know I understand some of that's block shots. You got guards going in and they have shots blocked and shots changed. But when your opportunities are there, especially for your bigs, and some of that goes to Zion Williamson not playing, obviously, because he is the finisher. But you've got to be able to finish when you get in those positions, because it's just rare to shoot a percentage like that and be able to be successful. You got to be able to take advantage.
You know, I look at that number too, and I ask myself, why is it so low? And does this team not have guys that can finish at the basket? And I don't think that's the case. But I do think that some of what we talked about earlier in terms of forcing things and trying to do too much is reflected in that stat, because some of these layups are contested. You're not going to shoot 40%, 49% on layups if they're all wide open and you're just strolling down the lane and you got an easy shot. I mean, these are NBA players. They're going to make 95% of those, but a lot of these are contested. A lot of these are, you know, you're trying to dribble around 2 or 3 guys, and then you get to the basket and there's another guy coming over. It takes a lot out of you to be able to finish that play. I feel like that's happening a lot. And you know, another thing too, I said I was going to keep this list brief. I'll throw in one more thing. The turnovers to me has been a problem. This was something specifically in the Golden State game that James Borrego talked about, was there was being too aggressive with your passes, trying to, I mean, if you take these NBA players and you put them on a pickup court somewhere in New Orleans, you can throw a ball across the court. You can throw, there's 3 guys, defenders in the way, I can still make this pass, but you can't do that in the NBA. No. And it seemed like that's happened a lot, where you see a pass and it's just like the decision-making process isn't there as far as risk reward. If you're going to throw a pass, if you're going to throw a risky pass, it better be one that leads to a basket. It can't be one out by the half court line where you're just throwing it to get a guy the ball and there's a defender in the way. So
it's that windshield wiper offense where you're just going around the perimeter. And I kind of expect that from the young guys, because Jeremiah Fears,
Sure.
you can get away with that at Arizona Campus Prep and Oklahoma. And at Maryland, you can do that if you're Derek Queen. But the veteran guys who are turning the ball over, those are the guys who need to be the better caretakers because you've been in these positions before. And so you understand how precious it is to protect the basketball. Now, in the NBA, you ain't going to be clean. You're going to have 14, 15 turnovers at least, probably, if you're a good team. But when you get up to 19, 20, 21, now you're in jeopardy because you're taking away too many opportunities for yourself. Those are shots you don't get, and they're probably extra opportunities that the opponent gets. And the one thing I want to roll back to is I want to see the Pelicans lead the league in dunk attempts blocked. Because I want you to be going in there to dunk it every time. And so I want you to lead the league in dunk attempts blocked. Because, I just want you – because, I mean, there are guys on this team that Trey Murphy can finish. Now, Trey had a dunk block, and I can't remember against who, but then he shied away, and it's like, dude, no. You got to probably 40-plus vertical. You got to go in there with some malice, and you got to be fearless about it. You got to go in there. Now, if Jeremiah Fears get a left-handed layup block and he shies away, then, okay, he's 6'4", he's a young guy, and maybe he's got to build his confidence back up. But I don't want to see, Trey Murphy and Herb Jones and those guys go in there and shy away.
Zion.
I don't want to see you shy away. I want to see you going in there attacking because that's going to be your highest percentage. And you're going to get some of them blocked. It's the NBA. These are the best athletes to me in the world. You're going to have some of them blocked.
To me, it's a mindset.
Yeah.
Right. It's a mindset. And to your point, I'm gonna add cosign and add a little something to. I want to see the Pels lead the league in broken hands. I mean, to your point, like start with that mindset. When I try to drive or I go to dribble, it's a fast break. I'm going to dunk.
Yeah.
Let the defense know you're going to the rim. Because right now, if I'm a defender, I'm going towards the glass. Because I think more often than not, you're going to lay it in. That's just me. But look, I think in 60 seconds here, we'll move on to some players. I know JD talked about it good, but Jim, turnovers, defense, rebounding, finishing, these are things that sound like you can work on and fix yourself, right? Is this different than I don't have the talent to compete or play? Or do you think all of that is a confidence thing? But I don't know. To me, if I'm a Pels fan, I'm like, can we fix it? I'm like, well, these are things you can fix, I think, at practice and get better habits.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of this is just a team thing too. Yeah. I think the players are here, and one of James Borrego's biggest objectives right off the bat is how do you get the team to contribute to improving some of these areas. The finishing around the basket, to me, too, is if you watch some of the teams that the Pelicans have played against that have so far this season that have really good chemistry and cohesion, they're creating wide open shots all the time. So your layups rate is going to be so much higher because there's just less defense there. You're open all the time. The rebounding thing is a team thing that I think that they can improve. Yeah, I just think a lot of these areas you do have the players, but you have to figure out as a team how to help each other be better in a lot of different categories. Yeah,
and some of it's just the tweaks. I mean, when Jim talks about the rebounding, how much of it is just, okay, nobody release until we get the rebound. Yeah, we're not leaking out. We're getting the rebound. And I understand that might hurt the fast break chances, but we need to get the rebound. Otherwise, everything is going to pot anyway because they're going to have 2 or 3 bites at it and they're going to score. So everybody, we'll have no leaking out. Okay, now, NBA, I don't know where this changed in life, but nobody boxes out. Just box out a dude. I mean, every now and then when you see a guy box out, it is so glaring that you mention it. Man, that's a great box out by so-and-so and so. Right. I mean, it is so glaring. So what's so difficult about that? Small things that we take for granted can be implemented to make this a better team, just incremental improvements. And as Coach Borrego said, it's a process. And you're trying to do it on the fly. And now you're trying to do it against really good NBA teams on the fly. So you got to be able to accept some setbacks along the way, but some things can be implemented immediately that you can do.
JD, I like what you said about not having guys leak out. I think it's a different thing if it's a point guard that's leaking out and maybe you can outlet to him if you get a defensive rebound. But there's been times when I feel like we see one Pelicans big under the defensive backboard and there's 3 players on the other team going after the ball, and you're telling this one guy, okay, you're going to have to fight off everybody to get this rebound. Yeah. So I mean, they need the forwards and the center to be back on defense and focusing on that and prioritizing that over trying to get out and run.
It just popped in my head as we go to some players here. I want to talk about Dallas. I remember going into that Dallas game on the road and Graf saying one of the things was rebounding, very key to rebound. And to your point, Jim, there was always 4 Pels jerseys around the rim. And in that first half, when the Pels started out well, en route to their first win, they rebounded extremely well. So it can be done. You got to want to do it. You name their names here. Let's start with the rookies. Your impressions, man, of what Jeremiah Fears and Derek Queen has been able to do now moving into the starting lineup, both of them.
Love it. Fears is at 14 points, 6 points a game, and right at 3 assists. He's learning as he goes. He's shooting 43% or something like that from the field, but 34% from 3. But you're seeing the growth. Now, he's a guy who's got to learn how to kind of channel his speed and kind of throttle down, and he's got to be a little bit better in terms of his decision making. But those are things that go along with being a 19-year-old point guard in the NBA.
Right.
There's a growth process that's going to have to happen. And we see increments of it, though. We see, little flashes of it here and there where you're like, okay, this guy's got it. He can do it. And so we expect to see him continue to climb. And it's in there. It's in there. Now with Queen, I mean, Big Easy, Big Smooth, Smoothie Queen. Hey man, Smoothie Queen. You can say what you want to say. That's me. But I mean, he's a guy who you look at him and he just seems older than 20. He plays older than that. And not because he's not the most athletic guy in the world, but because he understands the game. He understands leverage and angles. And, he's not the fastest dude in the world, but he gets downhill. How does that happen? He doesn't have the best jumper in the world, but he pump fakes guys and they go for it and he's able to get around them. How does that happen? He sees the floor well for a guy his size and for a guy of his ability. And you can see it coming with him. He's had a couple of rough games back to back, single figure scoring, but he's still rebounding. He's still, getting assists. He and Fears have to guard against the turnovers. But again, that's young guys and that happens with young guys. But he knows how to play. He just knows how to play. So putting him in the starting lineup, which was Coach Borrego's first move, obviously needed for this team. But he was a guy, he was finishing games anyway. So that tells you the importance he has. So let him play through his mistakes. Let him learn on the fly. Let him go into some games. And yeah, he might commit 2 fouls in the first quarter and 3 in the first half. Let him understand how to play that way because he's going to have to, because he's critical to what this team wants to do.
I just want to find out from talking to him at some point, how did he learn to play the way he does? Because you just don't see it anymore.
No.
Did he have like an old head in Baltimore who sat him down when he was 12 years old and said, let me explain to you how the game is played. You don't need to play fast. You can just survey the court. You can make decisions at your own on your own clock. It feels like we see this with a lot of international guys, some of the best players in the league, but we don't see that with some of the domestic guys anymore. So I'll be curious to hear from him.
If he went out there wrapped in ace bandages and smelling like icy hot, it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, he's got that kind of game.
I love how you call it a lot during the broadcast, like the driveway game too, right?
Yeah,
like just waiting in to do it. I think what really stood out to me, and I don't know if this is the end all be all, but I saw a lot of social media posts after the Golden State game. I'm sitting there on the couch and just kind of going over some stuff, and Draymond Green was giving him tidbits, apparently, speaking to him. Like, he kept seeing Derek Queen's head go up and down and nodding. So he was communicating that. Because, John, we talked about this on the broadcast. You talked about his back-to-back games going into the OKC game of single digits. The film's out on these two guys.
Yeah.
The film is out, right? Where he likes to catch the ball, where he likes to do it. Watch for the pass. Watch for the lob pass. He can dribble behind his back. There was a turnover where somebody stole it. So you mentioned it's the NBA. There are coaches, as I've seen, whether it's the bus, whether it's the plane, their laptops are open. They're cutting clips of players. The word is out on them, and that's part of the learning process. But I thought that was interesting. You're seeing teams plan for these guys, and now you're seeing vets. Like I said, it's Draymond Green. Say what you want about him. The guy knows basketball. He has a high basketball IQ. And for him to be giving them tidbits or just speaking to him in a manner where Derek Queen's listening and doing that, I think that's a huge sign of respect on the game.
Well, think of the things. Think of the things he can learn from Draymond, though. He can learn because Draymond is not a physical freak. He plays with angles and he plays with leverage. Those kinds of things that Derek Queen can learn from. He's saying, "Look, I'm not a high flyer either, and I'm going to the Hall of Fame. So maybe I can teach you some things that can help you along the way." Now, is he ever going to be a Draymond Green level defender? Probably not.
Yeah. But it's more the IQ and the style of the
but
game.
It's the IQ that you see with Draymond Green. You know Draymond Green doesn't want to shoot the ball, but he winds up with 8 assists. You know he's a guy who's undersized, but he ends up with 9 rebounds.
He knows where all the players are.
Yeah, he understands, and so that's one of those things where, as a big guy who actually is initiating the offense, he can help Queen immeasurably, I think, if he listens to him. And it looks like those guys are receptive to listening and learning.
I'm fine with Draymond's input as long as he's not talking about fan interaction and ref interaction. Those two things, let's leave that off the table.
Yeah, do as I say, not as I do.
Let's keep it on the court.
I'll say this, and I know we talked about it back in the day. You were talking about specifically when it came to Jokic and Baby Joke and stuff. And I've said on a broadcast, he reminds me of having a little Draymond into him, that he does talk. He talks to players. He talks to the officials. He hadn't got teed up that many times, if at all, this season. And he controls himself, that composure. So I think it is interesting. Real quickly, I want to do some players to watch and some players to keep an eye on here over the next couple of games. Jim, who's a player of the week and who's a player to watch for you?
Last season, a lot of times when they didn't get any wins, I said, let's not do a player of the week this week, but we will do one with Trey Murphy as the player of the week for week 4. He averaged 24.5 points. He averaged 7.5 rebounds. He shot 50, 32, 92 in shooting splits. Obviously, the 32 is a little bit low for him. He also moved into second place all time in three-pointers made for Pelicans all in the franchise history. He needs 57 to pass C.J. McCollum. Wow. So that's the player of the week. The player to watch over the next 7 days is going to be Karlo Makovic, partly because I think it's going to be interesting to just monitor his role. I mentioned earlier that the first game with James Borrego as head coach, he played 20 minutes for the first time this season. So, and also another reason I picked Karlo is because if you look at the opponents over this period of time, they play Denver with Jokic. They have Dallas's big guys, which they have a whole series of monsters in the front court. Kristaps Porzingis from Atlanta, Vucevic from Chicago. And also one quick thing about Karlo. We might track this throughout the season. Trey Murphy now is leading with 18 dunks. Mm-hmm. Karlo has 16 going into Monday's game, so definitely something that we'll keep an eye on. And then last thing, I have trending numbers for the 4 opponents that the Pelicans have over this period of time. Denver, the number is 2. That's what they rank in offense and defense. They're only 21st in defense last season, so you see just a huge jump that they've made so far. Yeah. Dallas, the number is 99, and that is how many points the Mavericks scored against the Pelicans in the head-to-head game. That was the 3rd time this season that Dallas was held under 100 points, but since then, over the next 6 games, they scored at least 104, and they've been way up offensively since they played the Pelicans. So that might be the key, is can you keep them in check and keep them down to a relatively low number? Last couple teams, Atlanta, my number is 6 for them. That's what they rank in defense this season. They're also 3rd in steals. They have a bunch of guys that are disruptive, that are long, that can wreak havoc with you. They've won a bunch of games without Trae Young as well, so that's another thing that has been interesting lately. And then lastly, Chicago, that they play next Monday. The trending number for them is 1-5, and that is their road record. They're 5-1 at home, only 1-5 on the road. Can you take advantage of that? As we record this, there's actually only 2 teams in the NBA that haven't won a road game. Shockingly, one of them is New York. The other one is Indiana. However, the Knicks have only played 3 road games. So, okay. And I look at that stat and I say, how is it possible that you've only played 3 road games so far? I mean, I think the Pelicans could use a little bit of that. It feels like they've only played road games up to this point.
Exactly. Now, partly, but the reason Jim chose Karlo, because y'all know I love Karlo, because that's my dude, and I absolutely, I'll take every bit of him that I can see, because last year he finished the game, I think his last 5-6 games he was averaging like 13 points and shooting 61% from the field. This year he's shooting 69% from the field. Now, small sample size, only 22 or 32, but two of 6 of those are threes. So take out the threes, and he's shooting like 77% from the field. His opportunities need to increase, humbly I say, because he dunks everything.
There it is.
He dunks everything. He's aggressive at the rim, and in fact, he ended up having the basket taken away because he grabbed the rim with one hand and dunked it in with the other.
Which, by the way, we've never seen before.
We've never seen before. Seen it in the dunk contest, but not in the game. So, love to see him play. In terms of the teams that the Pels are facing, I just want to see how they handle, especially more than anything, Oklahoma City and Denver. Because Oklahoma City, basically tries to tap you out. They suffocate you, and they make you not want to play. They make you not want to finish. They make you not want to compete. And if you're not of the right mindset and the right aggression, they'll push you around. They're going to be aggressive. They're going to foul you. You know they're going to foul you. You can't get upset with it. You can't get so discouraged by it or so distracted that you pick up technical fouls and flagrants. But understand going in that you got to match that to play against them, because that's the way they play. That's been basically officiated that way. That's been the exception to where, or the acceptance where officials say, well, that's just how they play.
Yeah.
So here we go. So I want to see how they handle that and the improvement against Denver, because Denver is a team now that looks like it's capable of challenging OKC, really challenging OKC, because of that monster they got in the middle. And so you're going to have to stand up against those two teams, and you get to find out a lot about yourself against those two teams. Again, as you're in transition, as you're trying to figure out what you're doing under a new coach, an interim coach, and you get a chance to put it out there on the floor. And it might be ugly. I don't know. It might be ugly. But I think they'll learn a lot about themselves in those two games especially.
Yep. Championship contending teams, MVPs, that's what the Pelicans have had to contend with. While there is change going on within their organization, that's the start of the season. It's the NBA. It's not easy. But as you can tell, there's a lot to get into, and we will continue to here on the New Orleans Pelicans podcast. John, is always a pleasure, sir.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
John.
All right. We'll see you next time on the New Orleans Pelicans podcast.